First I wanted to start by thanking Agnes for the introduction and for the invitation to be a part of this roundtable conversation and to moderate. I want to thank FIDE for involving Black History Month again in this edition of the African Diaspora Cinema Festival, and I want to thank Romana for hosting it. It's always a wonderful opportunity for us to have a broad conversation around cinema specifically, which a lot of times is lacking within the context of Italy and Florence more specifically. I wanted to begin by reading a brief introduction that I put together so that it may help to craft my words a little bit more, just to frame a little bit the conversation that we will have. And then we'll sort of move into everyone introducing their own relationship to this context, and then shift through a number of different questions before we open up to the public. And it's really our hope that all of you will have questions for all these wonderful panelists so that we can expand on what's put on the table and what kind of conversation we're having here. When we address African diasporic cinema, we are always talking about this really expansive worldview. We're talking about a lot of different things. And I think that this panel that includes critics, a scholar, an actor, a filmmaker is one way of addressing a fragment of what is encompassed by this framework. For a long time, there have been conversations ranging from a dialogue around authenticity to conversations around agency and lending voices. I feel that ultimately we are still in dire need for an expanded narrative around representations of African diasporic peoples and the stories that can be told about them. The festival, which we inaugurate today, is one attempt at fostering this kind of conversation, but it is one that cannot exist on its own. I really think that we are in need of a chorus of voices, a range of narratives, and a network of festivals of this type, so that together we may be able to actually encompass all that we are actually, addressing sort of the tip of the iceberg of this conversation today, but we really need to have a broader conversation around this. And I think that this is one way of getting beyond some of the flattened media portrayals, which so often that these films seek to combat. The multitude of voices is what I hope this conversation will stimulate. Given that we find ourselves operating in the context of Italy, it is important that we address the fact that within this context, as is true with many other sites, a lack of access to a broadened range of representations of the African diaspora has generated a blockish and stereotypical understanding of the African continent and its diaspora. We need to analyze the role that cinema has always played in a cross-cultural dialogue, exchange, and understanding. So it's my hope that through sort of the conversation that we'll have today in the various points of view and the various modes of engaging in cinema will help for us to expand on what this conversation is and what we mean when we talk about cinema from the African diaspora. Because I think that one of the things that we're going to attempt to do here as well is also to talk about how each of us defines what African diasporic cinema is and how we can address the role of this specific framework for cinematography. I was going to start by reading a really brief quote from Kenatera, and it is a way of just sort of setting up, I think, some of the conversation that may be put on the table here. Out with the authentic, in with the Wazimamoto. It is time for a revolution in African film criticism. A revolution against the old, tired formulas deployed in justification of the filmmaking practices that have not yet substantially changed in 40 years. Time for new voices, a new paradigm, a new view, a new Aristotle to invent the poetics we need for today. Something trashy to begin, straight out of Nigerian Video Handbook. Something sexy with without the trite possess of exotic behind spinning the ventilier for tourists. Something violent without the obscenity of trivializing brutality, trivializing phallocentric abuse, without accompanying violence of truth holding the whip hand over thought or difference. Most of all, it is the retreat into safe and comfortable truisms that must be disrupted by this new criticism, this new third cinema challenge. And I think that this quote is one that I find engaging in terms of an interest in trying to establish a new way of talking about something that we've been hearing about forever. But perhaps we need a broadened perspective and less of a narrow one. That's some of the objective that we have here. So I wanted to start by just asking each of the speakers, as I mentioned before, we're all coming from different relationships to cinema. And so maybe you can contextualize yourselves a little bit in relation to cinema, and maybe more specifically in relation to African diasporic cinema, to give a brief introduction to what you bring to the table today before we move on. We'll start with Florence.